But thank you very much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. I do a lot of presentations, obviously, for my work for Coca-Cola, and then increasingly with my responsibility for the Women's Food Service Forum. But this presentation and this trip was a little bit different. The first one is my husband's with me this time, and usually he stays at home with our kids, but this time we were like, it's in the UK, it's London, why don't you come with me? And I realized that that was very quickly a distraction, because his objectives were to go to every single pub he possibly could. So over the last 2 days, I've been at the oldest pub, the shortest pub, the longest pub, the best fish and chips pubs, and I finally had to say, you just need to go do this by yourself. I need to prepare. The other thing I think that was very unique was the fact that it's all of you. And part of what I love to do at the Women's Food Service Forum is really talk about advancing women leaders and promoting gender diversity. So I'm very, very happy to be here, and I appreciate all of your time. The other thing that was unique, that you probably all have your own routines of how you prepare, and you prepare for your speeches. And as I was sort of running through my presentation in my head, I was doing it with this wonderful English accent. And I just sounded so smart and brilliant, so I'm very sorry that you're getting the American version of my presentation, because the British one was just fantastic. But anyway, I'm really happy to be here. And one of the things that I wanted to do as I prepared for this presentation to all of you was really understand what was on your mind. And so I had a chance to really look at what you were tweeting, what you said on Facebook, what all the social media sites had to say. And what I found was that we have very similar things that worry us and that we're concerned about, whether we're in the UK or we're in the US. And some of the things that you said were, can women really restart their careers after having children? 70% of wait staff are women, yet only 41% are restaurant and catering managers. Does discouragement hold women back more than having children? And networking, is it vital to moving up the career ladder, and how do you actually do it? Working flexibly, how do you manage that? And finally, can we have it all? So I think that a lot of what we deal with in the US, you obviously are dealing with also, and I'm very happy to share with you some of the things that I've learned along the road, as well as what my company has been doing to advance women leaders. So I thought I'd talk today about 4 key things. First of all, what's the business case for change? You know, Brian spoke a little bit of it. You obviously understand it because you're here, but what do we see the business case for change? The second thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit about my story. Not because I like to talk about myself, but because Simone told me I had to. But hopefully there's some learnings along the way that will help all of you, because I know when I come to these presentations, I really like to walk away with what are the actionable bits that I can take and bring back to my career to help advance my career. And then I do want to spend some time talking to you about the Coca-Cola story. Back in 2008, our chairman, Muhtar Kent, put a key stake in the ground and said that we will advance women leaders. And that's really what it takes at the very top of the levels for a leader like that to put a stake in the ground and say we will make a difference. And finally, the action plan. What are some things that you can do as you leave this wonderful conference today to go and make an impact on your own careers and the careers of those of you who you influence? So thank you again. I'm excited for the conversation. I will be done so I don't have to streak, and I'm really looking forward to it. So let's talk first about the business case for change. And first of all, if you think about it, it's just very good for business. Women in key leadership roles or representing key influencers within our industries, it's just good for business. And I'll share with you a couple of the facts that are very critical from a global standpoint. 40% of women are in the global workforce, and that number is growing, particularly in emerging markets. 50% of the global population, and therefore our consumer population, are women. 70% of global household purchases are influenced by women, and $20 trillion of spending worldwide is controlled by women, larger than the economic impact of the US, China, and India combined. It's a big, big business, and having women involved is obviously very important. The emerging workforce is more and more female. Women are increasingly the majority of college and university enrollees across the world, 58% in the US and the UK, 60% in Brazil, 57% in China, and 50% in India, 49% in Japan, and 47% in Russia. So women will comprise the majority of tomorrow's new entrants into the workforce. We also know that it's just not because we say it's true, but research has proven that this is true and that gender diverse leadership really matters. Gender diverse teams drive results, and there's lots of different research bodies who have proven this. You can see a couple of them on the page there. When the workforce represents outside decision makers, a lot happens. When women are involved, there are at various leadership levels, companies receive return on shareholder investment by 34%, return on equity by 35%, and improved engagement. And we've also shown via research that when women are involved, our employees are more engaged, and innovation and creativity is really fostered. But we know that more and more women are starting at an equal parity with men at the entry-level positions, but only 15% are actually on executive teams. So what happens? What happens from the time that you enter the workforce and it's 50-50 to when you get to those C-level positions, the CEO, the CFO, the CLO, whatever the C is, Chief Executive, Chief Operating Officer, what happens between when you start the workforce and you actually get to those leadership positions? Well, we know that there's several key reasons. We know that, first of all, that C-level women who aspire to be the CEO or that top level within their industries, they had a very clear, developed, and refined career goals from the very beginning. They have and follow development plans, and the key thing here is that it's just not for 6 months. It's just not for 1 month. It was a long period of time that they looked at their development plan and very carefully mapped it out. You know, the sad thing is that that 21% of emerging leaders, they don't have career plans. And we also found that with the C-level women that they take more risks, and they take more thoughtful risks as they think about mapping their career and looking for those development opportunities. We also know, though, that there's barriers to the advancement. C-suite women have told us that there's lack of executive sponsors. There's limited access to informal networks like you have at Women's First. There's gender-based stereotyping, lack of role models, lack of really good actionable feedback, and lack of self-promotion. So the wonderful thing about the fact that you're here today is that you're taking action on some of those barriers. You're working on your connections, you're working on your development plan, and you're learning about what things can I foster and put into my development plan. So great job just for being here. As we think about, I guess, my story, and it's sort of awkward always to sort of stand up here and talk to you about my career path, but I think there's some key nuggets that I did want to share, and I know when I'm in meetings like this that it's always very important to understand how can you learn from people's experiences. And so one of the things we do at the Women's Food Service Forum, which is where I am an active member, I've been a member since 1996. My first male manager grabbed me by the hand and said, "You're going to go to this." And I was so engaged from that point forward that in 2004, I actually chaired their conference of 2,000 people. And this year was elected vice chair, and next year will chair their organization. And I'm very committed to the Women's Food Service Forum because it allowed me a chance to take some risks with my development and perhaps a little bit of a safer environment than my company, but it allowed me to really develop, grow those connections, and take some risks. So one of the things that we do at the WFF is we share these career progression charts. And it's really a way for us to tell our stories about what has happened through us throughout our career. And I don't know if you can see it, but the little green stars sort of are the stories that I wanted to share. The little yellow dots, it's a little hard to see, are significant family occasions. And then there's a little red dot that talks about the times that I really had a lot of learning with the Women's Food Service Forum. So just real quickly, I started my career in 1987 with P&G. I was in a sales function, rose pretty quickly within P&G until 1992 when I left to go to Coca-Cola. I was a unit manager and actually took a lateral move. I got a little bit of a salary bump, but I was managing people when I left P&G, and I actually went as an individual contributor to Coca-Cola. But the reason why I left was because I thought I'd get greater breadth and depth of experiences in the role that was offered to me at Coca-Cola. And I loved it. The brand spoke to me. I was one of those crazy people who wouldn't drink a Pepsi when I could have a Coke. I drink nothing, actually. But in any way, in 1992, I moved over to Coca-Cola, and very quickly, as an emerging leader, was an account executive 1, account executive 2, and account executive 3, was able to leverage my management experience at P&G, assumed a management position role, took a couple lateral assignments, moved to Dallas, and then moved to Atlanta in marketing. And these are some of the stories that I did want to just draw out of there in hopes that there'll be some learning that you can get. So I think the first thing is from toothpaste to soft drinks. I believe that if you're a very good salesperson, you can sell pretty much anything as long as you really believe in it and it has credibility. But that was a really hard thing for me to do. I thought that I'd be with P&G for my whole entire life. It was one of the best CPG companies. I had a great job, great career. But I have to tell you, I was also married at the time, and I was managing 2 careers. And my husband had a great job. Moving to Cincinnati, Ohio, which was the next step, was not something we really wanted to do. So as I thought about what my options were in staying in the Northeast, a headhunter called and asked me to move to Coca-Cola. And that was a very big thing for me because I had a very sort of safe, nice job at P&G. I loved it. I thought I'd be a lifer. But the brand of Coca-Cola really spoke to me, and the ability to really get cross-functional experiences that I wasn't necessarily getting with what I was doing at the time with P&G. And P&G is a great company. There's different fits for different people. So I moved over from selling toothpaste to soft drinks. It was a big, big move, but one that was worthwhile. I think the next part in my career progression chart was really moving from a time, sort of like you just saw on the video, to managing 2 careers, 2 children, and at one point losing like my 5th nanny. And I can remember I was the director of major accounts in New York City, one of the highest ranking women at the time in the geography, and losing my 5th nanny, and I was just like, I can't do it. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I just can't do it. And so I went to a very progressive man, my favorite boss at the same time, who comes up in another story. And I said, I just don't know what to do. I literally think I need a more flexible work-life balance option. And he goes, you know what, Susan, just go home and we'll talk about it on Monday. And so I had a chance to reflect over the weekend, and I came back and I said, you know what, I love working. I love what I do. I think I do a good job at it, but I need to be there right now for my son, and I want to work part-time. He said, fine. So we recreated the position that I had. I kept my director title. I worked 3 days a week. And he said, you know what? You need to keep track of your hours because what happens when you work part-time, you ended up working full-time, and then you're resentful, and then you leave. So don't do that. And so I did that for 6 months, and it was the biggest thing for me. It's probably the reason I'm still at Coca-Cola. The ironic thing was that after I worked part-time for six months, we actually went through a reorganization. And I can remember being on the streets of Boston walking with my soon-to-be new boss, who was saying, you know, I'd really like for you to come back part-time, and if you come back part-time, I'd love to make you the vice president of the Northeast area. Now, what he didn't know at the time that I was pregnant with my 2nd child, and so I'm contemplating part-time to full-time, you don't know that I'm pregnant, and I really want this job. And so I love to tell this story because I ended up accepting the position and really went from part-time to vice president, and was a vice president by the time I was 36 years old. So I think that's such a critical thing when organizations talk about flexible work-life balance options for their employees, and it being so important. It was very important to me, and one that I continue to support. I think the next story talks about seeking new opportunities for growth. And one of the things that we know from our C-level women is the fact that it's very important to take those stretch assignments, take those cross-functional developmental assignments, and you don't have to be vertical all the time in your growth of your career. I like to think of my career as a marathon. You know, it's sort of a diagonal line over time that might have some bumps, it might have some lateral moves, but eventually over time it'll be a vertical diagonal line. And when I was I was the vice president of the Northeast area and had really reached the peak of what I could do in that geography. But again, I was raising 2 kids. I had a great big expanded family support network and my husband, and couldn't see myself doing what I was doing outside of my geography. I needed to be true to what was important to me. And so there was a wonderful opportunity to start up a new business. We had gained a very sizable global piece of business, and I was asked to take a lateral assignment to go lead that team and create, really as a startup, that piece of business. And while it was a lateral, it provided me with all these unbelievable opportunities to grow in different ways. And so I always tell people it's important to look for those opportunities for growth, not just for the vertical ascent. And as a result of taking that assignment, I was uniquely qualified, which is really my next story, to take some personal and professional risks. And so at this point in time, my husband had stopped working to stay home with our children because my career was getting even more demanding. And when that happened, I was asked for the third time to move to Dallas to lead a third of our food service business. And I had previously said no because it wasn't right at the time, professionally and for my family. And so when the third time came around, my husband was at home, we were a little bit more mobile, our kids were at ages where you could move them, and we said, sure, let's move. So we moved to Dallas, took some personal and professional risks to be able to take that assignment, and did very, very well in managing that piece of business. As a result, I was asked to take another lateral position and lead up integrated marketing for North America. And that was probably one of the riskiest things I've ever done because I was moving again with family in tow, but I was taking a functional assignment that was really a stretch assignment because it was in marketing. And while I'll have marketing experience, I'm really more of a general manager. And this was leading at a very senior level our integrated marketing for North America. $750 million of direct marketing expense, and it was not my core competency. So again, we know that as you advance your career, you've got to take those very thoughtful risks to be able to move your career. And I learned so much in that assignment, not only from a functional standpoint, but it was one of those things where after 18 years with Coca-Cola, I moved from the field to headquarters. For any of you who have done that, you know that that's a big learning. Moving from a operating position to a staff position, very, very different. And it was an unbelievably hard learning experience, but one that I would never give back. And then finally, that got me to where I am now, really turning around a business and a team. And I do know that what this job now is bringing me is more this global experience, which again, I know will serve me well as I think about what my future career is at Coca-Cola. So I tell you those stories, hopefully, so there's a little bit of nuggets that hopefully you can get out. One is, I think, first of all, you need to live your own life. You can't live somebody else's life. You have to live what is true to you. I got asked to move to Dallas 2 other times, but I didn't take it because it wasn't the right time. The third time was the right time, and I was successful. I think the second thing that's really important is look for those stretch assignments, those cross-functional experiences. And the third is take a little bit of risk. Take it thoughtfully, but take a little bit of risk. So thank you for listening to my perspective on that. The next thing I want to talk about is Coca-Cola Story, because I do have the benefit of working for a great company that has a chairman who is very committed to this, not only from a business standpoint, but from a marketplace standpoint and a community standpoint. And it all starts really with our 2020 vision. There's 6 Ps, but the biggest P that I'm going to talk about today is really with people. And if you could look at this chart, what it would say is that we are working on advancing women leaders into operating positions. It's part of our 2020 vision. If you go on our website, this is what you'll see. And part of the work that we did was building a global framework. And I wanted to take you through that as part of our Global Women's Initiative. We built a holistic strategy which is based on workplace, marketplace, and also community. And from a workplace standpoint, we focused on accelerating the development and movement of female talent into roles of increasing responsibility at the Coca-Cola Company. The vision for this work is very simple and it's very focused. The Coca-Cola system mirrors at all levels the rich diversity of the marketplace that we operate in and is recognized internally and externally as the global leader for female talent. That's really our vision. From a marketplace standpoint, it's enabling the economic empowerment of women. And we want to do that by investing in 5 million women by the year 2020. This is our 5 by 20 initiative. And then also from a community standpoint, supporting programs that directly impact or indirectly benefit women as one component of the company's overall global philanthropic efforts. So there's a strategic framework that's focused on it. And as you can see, with the company's vision, let's see if I can click through here. Yes, here we go. As you can see, it's the company's vision as crafted by Muhtar, our chairman, that we have a workforce that is 50-50 women, 50-50 men and women at all levels. And please understand that this vision was crafted in January of 2008, when women were only 23% of our leadership. So we've made some progress, but as you'll hear later from our chairman, it's not enough. So to move this forward, there's 4 key pillars that you can see on the screen that were developed for us to do that. It's recruit, develop, advance, and retain. And for recruit, this means getting to know the talent outside of the Coca-Cola company and being ready to aggressively recruit talent when we need it. For developed, we really learned that we need a robust talent pool that's ready now talent. And our problem was that we had a lot of talent, but they weren't deemed as ready now. For advance, this means making sure that we have ready now talent and actually move them into increasing roles of responsibility. And for retain, it goes without saying, we can have great talent, but if we don't retain it, then we're not doing our jobs. And so these 4 enabling pillars, I think, are very important, and it really emphasizes the importance of having a good, strong development plan. In order to have ready now talent, we had to make sure that we had strong development plans focused for those women to be able to be ready now and move into those increasing roles of responsibility. And while those 4 pillars are critical to this work, so are the other 2 pillars of enabling culture and an engaged organization. Enabling culture is all about making sure that we are supporting programs and systems in place, things like flexible work-life balance arrangements that I talked about earlier, and also mentoring. An engaged organization is all about making sure that everyone in our organization understands the business case for the Global Women's Initiative and that they can see how critical it is to sustaining and growing our business. So let's talk a little bit about the progress that we've made in the workplace. While in New York at the Catalyst Awards dinner, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with Catalyst, but they really are a company that's focused on researching how more and more women get into boards. And they have a wonderful awards called the Catalyst Dinner. It's in New York where you have over 500 people from the Fortune 500 companies that attend. And this year, we actually received the award for making the most progress in advancing women leaders in our organization. Muhtar Kent, our chairman, was very clear about the progress that we made, but also the fact that we're not done. And in his acceptance marks, he actually said these words: "We're gratified but not satisfied." Gratified but not satisfied. In fact, he went on to finish by saying, "We know this is a journey, and we remain constructively discontent. Indeed, you can be sure that on the road ahead, we'll keep striving to earn and re-earn the very special honor of this award every day." So there's continued work to do. We've reached some nice milestones thus far, 5 years into our journey and being recognized by Catalyst as successful leaders. But we remain a work in progress, and we're still a long way from our vision of being 50-50 at levels by 2020. So let's transition to the slide, and I'll share with you a little bit about some of our successful practices. Since the launch in 2007 of our Global Women's Initiative, the initiative has reached many milestones and is now in a better position to proactively communicate achievements and promote its goals. So some of the things that you can see here on the slide that we focused on are people development forums, where we're actually going through from a very strategic and a routine way to be able to assess the global talent that we have and making sure that they're getting the appropriate development. We have a Women in Leadership program, which is focused on emerging leaders and executive leaders with specific training that focuses on advancing them in their careers. We have the Woodruff Cup Award, easy for me to say, the Woodruff Cup Award, which is a very prestigious award that's given out once per year to the business unit that has the most successful results. One of the key initiatives or the measurements of how you receive the Woodruff Cup is how you're doing on advancing women leaders. It's actually a metric in there. The 5th one is our Women's Leadership Speaker Series, where we've had a variety of global leaders come. They're hosted by Muhtar Kent, and they're open to all female staff within the company to learn from key leaders. And we also have flexible work-life balance programs to be able to help you transition through those key points in your life. So we will reach the 5 million women we seek to empower by looking all the way across our value chain. As you saw in the video, this means all the way from agricultural producers all the way to the people who produce the beautiful work that you saw, our artisans. Let me briefly describe the key elements of our global value chain to give you additional context for the different kinds of small businesses we have the opportunity to work with over the 200 companies that we operate within. Small-scale fruit farmers that grow mangoes or other fruits that we can use in our juices, suppliers of everything from sugar to paper clips, small distributors that deliver to our retail customers in some of the remote communities of the world. Once consumers have enjoyed our products, we use our beverage packages, often our recycled beverage packages, to collect them and do recycling collectible initiatives. And enterprising artisans from our used packages that turn recycled packages into works of art. What we have learned is that women across our value chain still face unique and significant barriers to success every single day. These are the 3 areas identified through research with our partners at Harvard and the International Finance Corporation. We've learned that women across our value chain are challenged by lack of access to business building training, lack of access to financial services or assets, and lack of access to peer networks and mentors. So this is what we're investing with 5x20, to break down the barriers women face to business success and enabling them to earn a better livelihood for themselves and also for their families. This is not philanthropy, but the creation of shared value. We believe that it is the most sustainable way to grow. 5x20 initially launched with 4 key pilot markets: Brazil, India, the Philippines, and South Africa. At the end of 2012, we announced the expansion of 5x20 to a total of 12 markets, including China, Costa Rica, Egypt, Haiti, Kenya, Mexico, Nigeria, and also Thailand. So how are we doing so far? We're making some progress. By the end of 2011, a total of 131,000 women were impacted through this initiative. By the end of 2012, I am pleased to announce that we had reached nearly 300,000 women. We are proud of the very early success as we continue to test, learn, and scale the programs that work. When we are confident these programs have strong foundations, we can then scale them to be even bigger and more impactful. We have a long way to go, and this won't be easy, but I hope you'll agree that the opportunity is massive and the endeavor is worthwhile. We know we can't get there without partners and advisors like yourself who will help us along the way. We know that this journey will involve bumps in the road and numerous challenges, but we are absolutely committed to getting there. Most important of all is that we want to take this to build a lasting legacy for women in business that benefits everyone: the women entrepreneurs, their families, their communities, as well as the businesses. So let's talk a little bit about what we've done from a community standpoint. In addition to its focus and support for women's advancement in the workplace and marketplace, the company supports women issues through its philanthropic work, including those of the Coca-Cola Foundation. The support specifically for women's initiatives has been ongoing activity of the foundation for many, many years. For instance, the foundation made its first grant to Ohio State University's Critical Difference for Women's program in 1993. And in the most recent years, the foundation has awarded more than $6.5 million that directly impact women's and women's issues. And some of the examples of ways that we've done that is with the Kasha Foundation's Building Economic Capabilities program, the Agnes Scott College's Developing Global Women Leaders program, National Hispania Leadership Institute's Latinas Learning to Lead program, Pax Worth program, and Replenish Africa initiative, also called RAIN. So that really summarized from a workplace, a community, and a marketplace standpoint, the Global Women's Initiative for Coca-Cola. I hope that you learned a little bit about our company's efforts in this area and the fact that we've got still a long way to go. So finally, as we close, what's your action plan? What can you take away, hopefully a little bit, at least one thing from my presentation that you can take back into your workforce and really make a difference for yourself as well as the people that you lead? And I think as you look back to my career progression chart, I think I already said it, but just again, it's looking for those stretch assignments, cross-functional experiences, taking a little bit of risk, but also doing what's really true to you, to your family, and to what's your life, because you have to live your life. You can't live somebody else's life. So what can you do? you have to own your own career strategy. You know, I had one of the people that works for me across the desk from me the other day, and they said, you know what, nobody called me for that job. And I just looked at them and said, they're not going to call you. You have to go out and get it. You have to tell people what you want. You have to prove that you've got a development plan getting you ready for it. And you've got to work your network to make sure that people know that you're capable and you've had the experiences to do that. People just don't call you. So I think the very first thing is you have to own your own career. You have to step back and assess yourself and identify the competencies that you're really, really good at and the ones that you maybe need some work on. But think about them in the context of where do I want to go and what do I need to improve on and how can I really leverage my strengths? And I think one of the hardest things for us to do as women is to really ascertain, what do I want to do? Really, truly, what do I want to do? And again, that's got to be true to you and not to somebody else or what you think somebody else wants you to do. We do know back from research that C-level women, they knew what they wanted to do and they had a very strong career map and development plan to go get it early on. I think you also need to identify the gaps that you might have in your career and really think about those experiences that are gaps that you need to fill to be able to move on to the next position. Those lateral assignments, those stretch assignments, those cross-functional assignments to round out your career. And finally, what are the development tools that you have available in your company with organizations such as Women's First or other networks that you might have? Use those networks. One of the most powerful things for me with the Women's Food Service Forum is the learning that I've gotten along the way. And it's been outside of what has been great development from a company standpoint. I can remember the first time I got on stage when I was chairing the 2004 conference and spoke in front of 3,000 people. That was sort of a wow moment for me. That was different than what I'd done before. And now as I move into the chair position, leading a very intelligent senior level of key influencers within the industry, another great development experience that I necessarily wouldn't have gotten at my company. So look for those opportunities to round out your development. It might be an untraditional way. And again, we've looked at, and this is some WFF work, as we look at the different levels of your career, emerging leader, emerging executive, and then finally the C-level. The three key things that come out that are critical to your success are those key projects, are you raising your hand, or are you getting those key projects, your stretch assignments, and your cross-functional experience. I think also, you probably also know, because you're here at Women's First, that the connections provide unbelievable opportunity for you for access and acceleration, but also your own development. One of the things at WFF we speak about is building your own personal board of directors. That group that you select of your contacts, that is your board of directors, that when you've got an issue, you've got a problem, you need some coaching, you've got a key group that you can go to. And I've carefully crafted my personal board of directors along the way, and I use them for very different ways. And they're mostly outside, but there's a few inside company folks on my personal board of directors. There's been a lot written lately around the difference between a mentor, an advocate, and a sponsor. And a mentor is somebody who gives you coaching and feedback. An advocate is someone who can champion on your behalf when you're not in the room. And a sponsor is an influencer who says, I think she can do the job and I need her in that position. That happened to me when I took that role from Dallas to leading integrated marketing. I had a sponsor when nobody else really knew who I was or what my skills were, and obviously knew I wasn't tremendously skilled in marketing, who said she needs to be in that role. She would be good for her development and will also learn from here. So very different roles a mentor, an advocate, and a sponsor have. And lastly, from an action standpoint, I'd say jot down who are your mentors, who are your advocates, and who are your sponsors. And if you've got gaps, figure out a way that you're going to go get them. It's critical to your career. And finally, it's about your connections. We do know that. One of the biggest learnings for me was going from 18 years in the field to living and working in our Atlanta headquarters. There's a whole different network happening there, and when you're out in the field, it's very hard to know what that is. So your connections make a difference. You need to develop them internally, but also in groups like Women's First. The wonderful connections you're going to make here today to build your personal board of directors, to look for new assignments, to look for new development. It's here in this room, and it's also within your company. You have to use it, though. It's not going to come to you. And so finally, I just really wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity to come to London and speak to you. I'm humbled that I got a chance to talk a little bit about my story, share some of the work that's happening from a Coca-Cola standpoint, and to meet all of you. You've got a terrific path ahead of you, and I look forward to interacting with you over the day. So thank you, and I think we have a few minutes for questions if there's any, maybe 2 or 3, if you have them. Otherwise, I'll just say thanks. Any questions? Yeah, I think the CEO of Yahoo has also done the same thing around not having flexible work life. I can only tell you from my personal experience that it made a big difference in my career. It's the main reason, or not the main, but one of the main reasons I'm still at Coca-Cola, because I had that chance at a very brief time to do what I needed to do and then move forward. So I actually disagree with that. I think it's a big proponent, and I see many people within the workforce at Coca-Cola who are taking advantage of it and then coming back at the appropriate time when it's right for them and their families. And as a result, we don't lose that intelligence, that experience, and that diversity over time. So I respectfully disagree to some of that work. Was there another? I thought I saw another question. Right over there in the white? Oh, sorry. Could you say it again? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Hello. It's not particularly relevant, but what I was thinking was, is there one particular person in the organisation that came up with the marketing idea of share a Coke with? Because it's absolutely fantastic.
I'm sure there were probably many people. I don't know
I was
the
really
name for
hoping
sure.
you'd know their name, and you put it up and you say, it's this person, and they're fantastic. All right,
I think it was probably a little bit of our creative excellence team, our connections planning team, and some agency work, but I appreciate that you love it. Okay. One other? Was there one over here? In the back? Sorry, I really can't see you, but.
Hi there, I'm from Atlanta, so I'll just say hey, y'all.
Hey!
Thank you. So I was wondering how you found the impact of your women's leadership activities within Coca-Cola in terms of attracting talented women. You talked about having increased the amount of women that you've recruited from externally into senior roles. And I wondered about the power of what you're doing and how that's affected that activity.
That's a great question. I think we're very early on measuring it. I know that to be able to receive the Catalyst Award, there are things that you had to be doing, like flexible work-life balance arrangements, or the other initiatives that I shared, to even be considered for the Catalyst Award. And we take a lot of those awards very seriously, because to your point, to be able to engage and attract great talent, you've got to be able to have demonstrable things that you're doing that proves that you're a great place to work. And so I would say that we're making progress. I mean, certainly, as Muhtar Kent said, we still have a lot of work to do. We're not at 50-50 at the executive leadership ranks, but we're making progress. So I think it's working. Can I give you specific metrics right now? I can't. But I'd say that some of those outward achievements that are very critical for employees to understand what is actually this company doing are very important.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think I'm out of time. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope it was helpful, and I look forward to connecting with you over the next day.